remember, we are going to be playing list number 1 of all the 7 summits to choose from, so we're going to blacklist Wilhelm, Puncajaya, and Mont Blanc, which leaves us with the 7 mountains to win the game: Kosciuszko, Everest, Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, Vinson Massif, Aconcagua, and Denali. Now, to begin, we will start by choosing our mountain. We also have 10 mountains here, obviously our color, to choose from at any order we wish, however we want to climb them. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Kosciuszko to start the game off. And we're going to go right into the roll phase because we don't have any gear to adjust or anything like that. So we roll an 8, which is an acclimatization check. Kosciuszko has a 1 acclimatization requirement, and we start the game off with 1 acclimatization, as well as 10 health here. However, the 1 is all we needed to not get altitude sickness. So we're going to go ahead and draw our 2 cards. We'll move on to the draw phase. And we drew 1 and a 1, which is a total of 2. We needed a movement requirement of 1. So that's enough to circle the first available value. So we look on the sheet here, and Kosciuszko's first value here, right here, reads success. So we circle that success marker, which means we take the reward. Kosciuszko's reward is 1. And we also place a summit marker on Kosciuszko because that was our one of our 7 that we're trying to get after, and that was a successful climb. However, on our next turn, we're just going to go right back to Kosciuszko. And we rolled a 3, so that's bad weather. We must roll 1 and add this number to the movement requirement. So 1 plus 6 is 7. We're going to need 7. And we're not going to have that much movement this turn. We're pretty much stuck in the bad weather. So we're going to have to wait this one out. However, we are not invested in this climb, so I am allowed to abandon and take this off this board at this point. I won't spend anything during my upgrade phase. I'll go right into my next turn, go right back to Kosciuszko. 9 is a hazard that doesn't exist, so I'll go right to my draw phase. 0 and 1, we only needed 1 point for Kosciuszko, so that is enough to go ahead and circle the next available space, which is a success space, and we'll take 1 XP for successfully climbing that. However, we will not put another summit marker on there because there already is one of ours on Kosciuszko. Let's move on to the next turn. We're going right back to Kosciuszko. 5 and 6 is 11. That's bad weather, so we're going to roll 1. 4 plus 1 is 5 we're going to need. So we got a 1 and a 2 here. And we do have some XP to spend, so I'm going to upgrade this 1 card by spending 2 XP. Removing this from game and drawing the top card here. Our hand value now is 6. Now, we needed 4 plus 1 is 5, and we got 6, so that's enough to have a successful turn, which means we'll circle the next available space. In this case, it's a success marker, so we'll draw 1 XP from the XP bank as our reward. And we're gonna go right back to that for our next turn. Here we go. 8, acclimatization check, and we're at 1. We only needed 1. We need more cards here, so we're going to go ahead and shuffle while we have no cards in our climber. We shuffle all the discard cards into our climber deck, so we have a new deck to draw from now. 4 and 1 is 5. That is more than enough to have a successful turn. So we're going to circle the next available space, which is a success, which means we get 1 more marker here. And for our next turn, we're going to play it safe. We're going to go right back to Kosciuszko. So rolling. 8 is acclimatization. Again, we're good on that, so we're just going to draw. 2 plus 1 is 3. That is more than enough for the movement requirement. So we can go ahead and circle the next available space, which is a success marker. Now, if you look here, there are no more available spaces for Kosciuszko's climb, which means we're not allowed to climb this mountain anymore this game. and we're also forced to take it off the game board. So no more climbing Kosciuszko. However, during our upgrade phase, I will go ahead and spend 1 to upgrade to a 2 acclimatization. That cost 1. And the next one to upgrade it to 3 costs 2. So I have 2. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade that as well. So our acclimatization is now at 3. Preparing for our next climb, we're going to Mount Wilhelm. We have a 10. It's a hazard that does not exist on this mountain, so we're going to go right to our draw. 2 and 0 is 2, so 2 is all we needed to climb, have a successful turn. And the first available space for Wilhelm is a success space, which means when we circle that, we will collect the reward immediately, which is 2 for Wilhelm. Now, Wilhelm is not one of the 7 to climb to win the game, so we don't place a summit marker on there. However, we do collect the XP. Our next turn, I'm going to go right back to Wilhelm. That's 7 mountain favor. Now, in single-player games, you'll never have a bonus XP because there's only going to be 1 mountain card in the player area at all times. So for single-player purposes, we can move on from 7s and essentially ignore them. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my draw phase and draw 2 cards. 1 plus 1 is 2. That's just enough to have a successful turn to circle the next available space, which is a success marker, and I'll take 2 XP for that. Now we'll go ahead and go on to our next turn. We'll go right back to Wilhelm here. And we roll a 4 this time. It's a hazard, it's an avalanche that does not exist on this mountain. So we go ahead and just go right to our draw phase, but we need to shuffle our discard back into our final deck to do this. So drawing 2 cards, we draw a 1 and a 0. Not enough to meet the movement requirement, which is 2. So what I'm going to do is spend 2 on this 1 card. It costs 2 XP to upgrade this 1. Remove it from the game, draw this top card, which is 5. Our hand value is now 5, which is more than enough to have a successful turn. And we'll circle the next one. Available space is a success space, so we'll take 2 for that as well. Moving on to the next turn, we're going right back to Wilhelm. It's working out for us. So we rolled a 7. That's all good for us, so we're going to go right to our draw phase. 1 plus 1 is 2. That's just enough to have a successful turn again. So again, we circle the next space, which is success, and we take our rewards for that. Now, I guess with that said, I'll go ahead and I'll max out the Wilhelm climb too. We're going to go back for a 5th climb on Wilhelm. That's 3. That's a bad weather, so I'm going to roll 1. And add 6 plus 2 is 8 as our new requirement for this turn. That's a pretty high requirement, and there's only a 3 showing there, so I'm just going to sit this one out and call this a failed attempt. However, I'm not invested, so I can take this off of the game board. My next turn, I will return to Wilhelm again and try this again. 9 is a hazard that does not exist, so we draw 2 cards. 4 plus 2 is 6. That is enough to meet the requirement, so we circle the next space, which is success. So we get 2 XP for that. Now, that is also the last available space for Wilhelm, which means it must be removed from the board, and we're not allowed to climb this for the rest of the game. So both of these mountains are now out of our climbing possibilities. So during our upgrade, I'm going to spend some of this XP here that we have. During the upgrade, I'm going to spend 4 to purchase a gear piece. And we're going to place this gear piece right here as a helmet. And we're going to move on to our next climb, which is Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro has 1 hazard here. It's a rockfall. As you see, rockfall is a 9 and you need a helmet, and that's why I've prepared for that hazard there. However, there is also a requirement for altitude, which is 4, and we are actually only at 3. So we're taking a risk here because we didn't upgrade our acclimatization enough. We're taking a risk that we might get altitude sickness. So let's see what happens. 2 and 1 is bad weather. So we're going to roll 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So we need 3. We're going to go ahead and shuffle these. 3 points of movement is all we need to have a successful turn. We'll draw 2 cards, and we only have 1 point of movement. However, I will go ahead and spend 2 XP to remove this card from the game, draw this card into my hand, and now our hand value is 3, and that was exactly what we needed with that rain drizzle problem that we ran into there. Just a little bit of a storm there. So 3 points is enough to have successful turn, so we will circle the first available space. And if you notice, the first available space on Kilimanjaro is a number. It's not a success, which means we do not collect XP until we circle a success marker. In addition to that, since we circled a number, we're considered invested in this mountain. We're not allowed to remove this mountain card off of the game board until the success marker is circled. So we're going to go ahead to our next turn here. Try to get off this mountain. We rolled a 6. A 6 is an acclimatization check. Now, remember I said I didn't upgrade my acclimatization. I'm at 3. This is a 4. I'm now having altitude sickness. So I must roll 1 die and take that much damage from my health. So, lucky roll, I only got 1 point of damage from altitude. Or not exactly lucky, but not as bad as it could have been, I guess. So my health is now at 9, and we move on to our draw phase. We draw 2 cards. 4 and 2 is 6, which is way more than 2 that we needed to have a successful turn. So we circle the next available space on Kilimanjaro, which happens to be the success space. Now we are allowed to collect the XP reward and remove this from the board, as well as place a summit marker on Mount Kilimanjaro, because that's one of the 7 that we're trying to get after. Our next move during our upgrade phase here will be to purchase another gear piece. So I'm going to spend 4 XP on another gear piece. Place it right there on the ice axe. And we'll go to our next turn. Our next turn, I will select Mount Elbrus as the mountain that I'm climbing. And the next phase is the adjust gear phase. So I'm going to adjust my gear to be a beacon and an ice axe instead of a helmet and an ice axe. And that's because if you look at the hazards for Elbrus, it's exactly 2 hazards, and they are an avalanche and falling, which I now am prepared for, at least more prepared for. So let's go ahead and start climbing Elbrus. 8. 8 is an acclimatization check. Now, the requirement is 3, and I'm at 3 still. I'm still at 3 acclimatization points. And the requirement is only 3, so I don't get altitude sickness this time. So I get to go ahead and draw 2 cards. 1 plus 5 is 6, which is way more than enough than I needed. Only needed 4. So I will call that a successful turn, and I'll circle my first available space on Elbrus, which is a number, which means I'm invested. So I have to keep climbing to get that XP. So next turn, here we go. 7, Mountain Favor, so we can just ignore that, draw 2 cards. 2 plus 1 is 3. We need 4. So what I'm going to do is spend 2 to remove this card from the game and draw this into my hand. My hand value is now 6, which is now enough to have a successful turn. I will circle the next available space, which is a success space on Mount Elbrus, and I will collect 6 XP for climbing Mount Elbrus, as well as placing a summit marker on the game board for Mount Elbrus. And the next The next attempt I will make will be for Vincent Massive on my next turn. I will choose Vincent Massive to climb. I'll go ahead and shuffle these cards up too. Rolling for Vincent Massive is 11, bad weather, so I'll roll 1. And I got 4. 4 plus 4 is 8 I need to have a successful turn. I got a 4 and a 2, so that's 1 short, but this one's upgradable. So I'm going to spend 1 XP that's required here to remove this from the game. Draw this into my hand. My hand value is now 9, which is plenty enough to have a successful turn. And I will circle the very first value of Vincent Massive, which is a 1, which means I'm invested. This stays on the game board until I hit the success. So rolling my next turn, 3 is bad weather. 5 plus 4 is 9. Very difficult here. So not enough. I'm not going to have enough even if I upgraded. So I'm just going to call this this turn a wash. I have to wait it out in the storm. Hopefully the storm will pass by here really quick. Moving on to our next turn. 9. 9 is a hazard that does not exist on Vincent. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 cards. 1 plus 4 is 5. I need 4 to have a successful turn. So I get to circle the next space, which is a 2. And I'll go on to my next turn. And that is an 8. It's an acclimatization check. I'm at 3. The requirement is 3. So no altitude sickness. I get to go ahead and draw 2 cards. 0 and 4 is enough to have a successful turn. All I needed is 4. So I don't have to spend anything there. To have a successful turn, I'll go ahead and circle that, which this time it is a success space that I circled, which means I collect the XP reward, which happens to be 9, as well as placing a summit marker on the game board on Vincent Massive. Now, during my upgrade phase, I will be spending something here because I don't want to have more than 10. Otherwise, I have to discard down. So what I'll be doing here is spending 4 on another gear piece. And I'll also... it's going to bring my acclimatization up to 5. It's going to cost me 3 plus 4 is 7. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 7 to bring my acclimatization up to 5. And with that, I think I'm ready for Aconcagua here. So I'm going to go ahead and select Aconcagua as my next climb. And I'll shuffle the climber cards as well. Rolling for Aconcagua. It's 5. This is a hazard that exists. It's a falling hazard. Luckily, I have an ice axe, so I'm going to roll 2 dice and take the difference because I have an ice axe. So 5 minus 4 is 1. I'll take 1 point of damage. Now, had I not had the ice axe, I would have had to take the sum. So you could see that I'd take 9 points of damage there without the ice axe. And you can see how important. So I'll go ahead and draw 2 cards. 5 plus 4 is 9, which is more than enough to meet the requirement for Aconcagua, which is only 4. So I get to circle my first available space for Aconcagua, which happens to be a 1. I got a few more spaces. Here we go. I'm now invested in Aconcagua. I'm going to continue my climb. 5 is a falling hazard again. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and roll and take the difference. 6 minus 1 is 5. So I'm down to 3 life after that fall. That one hurt quite a bit. Four and 2 is enough to have a successful turn. So I'll go ahead and circle the next one. And we'll go to our upgrade phase. We'll go ahead and spend 3 XP to bring our life up to 6. And I'll go on to the next turn. I'll roll. That's a 7. and go ahead and draw. 4 and zeros, 4. All I needed was 4, so that's another successful turn. I'll take my next turn. That's a 7. I get to draw. 3 and 1 is 4. That's another successful turn. This time I circle the success marker, which means I get 16 XP rewarded to me. And I place a summit marker on the game board, like so. During my upgrade phase, I will spend 4 XP to bring my life up to 10. In addition to that, I'll spend 5 XP to bring my acclimatization up to 6. Cost 5 there. And now my XP is under 10, so I don't have to worry about discarding. I'll go ahead to my next climb here, which will be Denali. Rolling for Denali. 8. This is an acclimatization check, and the requirement is 4. My acclimatization is 6, so I don't get altitude sickness. I'll go to my draw phase and draw 8. I only needed 5 movement points, so I circled the first available space on Denali, which is a number. Now I'm invested in Denali. Next turn, rolling for Denali. 9. This is a rockfall. It does exist on Denali, so I must roll 2 dice. However, I do have a helmet, so I'm going to take the difference instead of the sum. So 4 minus 1 is 3. My life is down to 7. And I will draw 2 cards. 5 plus 3 is 8. I only needed 5. So I get to circle the next available space on Denali. Next turn, I'll roll for Denali. Is 11, bad weather, so I'll roll 1. I'm going to add 5 plus 5 is 10, extremely difficult. And I'm going to let this one go. I'm going to sit it out in the weather, hope the weather clears up. Call this turn a wash. Go to my next turn. 4. 4 is an avalanche, but I do have a beacon, so I'm going to take the difference of these two, which 6 minus 6 is 0. So I take 0 points of damage for that, which is nice. I'll go ahead and draw. 4 and 1 is 5. I needed 5 exactly, so I'll keep that and circle the next available space for Denali. Moving on to the next turn. That's a 6. A 6 is an acclimatization check. Again, I'm at 6, and this requirement is at 4, so I do not get altitude sickness. I get to draw 2 cards. 4 and 0 is not enough. However, I do have 8 XP here, and I think I want to do that. So I'm going to spend 8 XP to upgrade this card, which is the most expensive card to upgrade. It costs 8. It's a 0 card. It's basically your lazy bone. That's why it's difficult to get rid of, but you can get rid of it. Anyhow, bye-bye lazy bone. So I remove that from the game, and I draw this card into my hand. My new hand value is 8, which is enough to have a successful turn. So I circle the next space. Only 1 successful turn away from completing this climb successfully. So go ahead and roll for the next turn. 7, Mountain Favor, so I'll go ahead and draw 2 cards. 5 and 4 is 9, which is more than enough for the requirement for Denali. So I'll go ahead and circle the next space, which is a success space for Denali. So I will go ahead and collect 20 XP, as well as placing a Denali marker on the game board here. And that's 6 of the 7 summits already on there. So during my upgrade phase here, I definitely want to spend this so I don't have to get rid of it. I'll spend 4 on a gear piece. So now I have all the gear pieces. I'll spend 6 on upgrading my acclimatization to 7. So that's the last spot there for acclimatization to upgrade. I'm at 7 life and I have 10 XP, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to walk right into Mount Everest with these stats and see how well I do. Mount Everest is my choice of mountain for my next turn here. Rolling for Everest. Okay, that's 3, which is bad weather. So I roll 1. I add 2 plus 6 is 8. I need 8. And, well, let's see here. Let's spend 2 on this card to remove this card from the game and draw this card. Now we have 6 in our hand. We still need a couple more, but this one's upgradable, so we're going to go ahead and upgrade this one as well. By spending 1, remove this card from the game and draw this. Now we have 8 in our hand, which is exactly what we needed in this little bit of a storm on Everest. We actually successfully made it through this turn. So I'm going to circle the first space here. If you look, that is a number, so I'm invested, but we've got a long ways to go until we succeed on Everest. Oh, here we go. Rolling for Everest on our next turn. 4. 4 is a hazard. It's an avalanche, but we have a beacon. So we're going to take the difference of these two. 4 minus 2 is 2 points of damage. We're now at 5. I will go to my draw phase. 7 is enough to meet the 6 requirement of movement. So I'll circle the next space on Everest, which is a 2. And during my upgrade phase, I'll spend 2 XP to bring my life back to 7. And we'll move on to the next turn here. So go ahead and roll for the next turn. That's a 5. And that's a falling hazard, but we do have an ice axe, so we're going to take the difference. 4 minus 1 is 3, so we're going to take 3 points of damage. Our life is now at 4. And we go to our draw phase. So I'm going to shuffle these up. And we draw 2 cards. 4 and 4 is 8, which is enough to have a successful turn. We'll circle the next space there. Moving on to our next turn. That's a 7. All right, so we draw 2 cards. 4 and 4 is 8. That is enough to have a successful turn. So again, we're going to go ahead and circle the next one. And I'm not feeling too good about only having 4 life, so I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 of my XP to bump my life up to 6. You're not allowed to bump your life over 10. Anyhow, I'm at 6, and I'm going to go on to my next turn here. 3, bad weather, so I'm going to roll 1 and add this to Everest requirement. So 4 plus 6 is 10. Extremely difficult movement to get. I only get 7, so I'm stuck in the storm. I cannot move. I'm going to go ahead to my next turn. 7, which means I get to go to my draw phase. 4 and 5 is 9. I only needed 6, so that's a successful turn. Circle the next 5. Next number is 5. So my next turn, I will roll for Everest. That is an 8. That's an acclimatization check. Now, the requirement for Everest is 7, and my acclimatization number is 7. So I do not get altitude sickness. I don't have to roll for altitude sickness. I'll go ahead to my draw phase. 5 plus 3 is 8, which is enough to meet the movement requirement. I'll circle the next number, which is a 6, getting closer to the end here. Next turn, I'll roll. I get a 4. It's an avalanche, but I do have a beacon, so I'm going to take the difference of these two. 6 minus 2 is 4. So I'm going to take 4 points off my life. I'm down to 2 life. I'll draw 2 cards. 4 and 4 is 8, which is enough to meet their movement requirements. So I'll circle the next available number there, which happens to be a 7. I've only got a couple more turns to complete this game, but my life is only at 2, so during my upgrade phase, I'll go ahead and spend the rest of my XP here, which is 3, to bring my life back up to 5. And I'm going to move on to my next turn. I'll draw, or roll 2 dice. I have 6, and that is an acclimatization check. Again, I have 7, and I only needed 7 acclimatization, so I get to go ahead and move to my draw phase at this point. 4 plus 4 is 8, which is more than enough to meet the requirement, so I circle the next available space, and I only need 1 more successful turn here to win the game. Let's see if we can do it. Hopefully last turn. Let's see what happens. 7, Mountain Favor. Love that number. So we're going to draw 2 cards, and our last 2 cards adds up to 8, which is more than enough to meet the requirement, which means we circle the success, and we have completed the game. So in doing so, I'm going to go ahead and collect the 30 XP that I get for climbing Everest. I'm also going to place my summit marker on the game board. So now we have 7 summit markers on the game board, and I've officially won. And at this point, all we have to do is count up our victory points to see how well I won. So the first thing you do is you get 40 points for completing the 7 summits. If you complete the 7 summits specified, then you get 40 points. So that's 40 points right off the bat. Right after that, we're going to count all of the XP. So in this case, I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Now notice that's more than 10, but that's okay because it's not the game ended before the end of my turn. So I'm going to get 30. These 30 XP translates to 30 victory points. So I'm also going to get 30 victory points for having those. Now, for climbing 8 mountains, okay, there's 10 mountains total, and I climbed 8 of them. I'm going to get 1 point for each of those 8 that I climbed. Now, if I climbed all 10 mountains, I would have gotten 10 points here, but I only climbed 8, so I'm going to get 8 points for that. Now, the other bonus that you get is for being the first climber on any of the specified 7 summits. Now, because this is a single-player game, I was the first on all 7 here. So I get 7 bonus points for being the first on these 7, 1 of each of those. Now the last thing I do here is subtract points for repeated climbs. So repeated climbs, for example, I repeated climbs on both Kosciuszko and Wilhelm, but I did not repeat climbs on any of the others. As you see, there's only 1 success circled for each of these others that I climbed. However, there's multiple successes for Kosciuszko and Wilhelm. There's exactly an excess of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 excess repeated successful climbs. So I'm going to subtract 8 for those repeated climbs. So my final score comes out to be 77 for this game.